July 18th meeting of the Lake Forest City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Honorable James Cowie.
Here.
Alderman Novit.
Here.
Alderman Waldeck. Here. Alderman Moore.
Here.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Here.
Alderman Morsch.
Here.
Alderman Schoenhyder.
Here.
Alderman Palmer.
Here.
Alderman Edelman absent. 8 present, 1 absent. Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Bertie. Would you please join me in a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first order of business this evening is reports of city officers, the first being comments by mayor. I do have a few items, the first being a resolution of appreciation for the outgoing Croya board members. I'd like to read those names in recognition for their service and their time. And certainly the community thanks each and every one of you for all your dedicated service. The names are Nate Blackmare, David Field, David Thomas, Catherine Driscoll, and Chris Watt, who was chairman from 2003 to 2011. I'd entertain a resolution for appreciation for these outgoing Croya board members. All in favor? We have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Our next item is the appointments to Croya for new members. And I know we have some of you here this evening. So I will read your names, and if you wish, you can either stand up or show your faces. Come on up, and I know your liaison here is right next to me, David Moore. I know you were chatting here earlier, but we thank you for coming this evening. We have Lori Doherty, appointment, Julian Richmond, Annie Henry, Sarah Whitney, and Elena Hender. And we have, who do we have here today? Just.
I'm Lori Doherty, Sarah Whitney, Julie Richmond.
Well, thank you, and congratulations for being appointed and for volunteering. We appreciate all your efforts, and I know we're going to have fun working together. And Dave is excited about the new appointments on board. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're not obligated to sit here through the rest of the meeting, so that might be punishment. I'm also entertaining a motion to approval of these new members to Croya Board.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. I'd also like to just take a few minutes to thank the folks who were involved in the 4th of July celebration. I attended with my family, and again, once again, this year was a spectacular event. I thought the fireworks were outstanding. The bands were outstanding. Rick Springfield's a little odd, but you know what? Kind of goes with the territory. But it was a fun evening.
Jesse's girl, right?
Well, he does one song anyway, so. But it was a lot of fun. I would like to thank these individuals, Laura Brown, the foundation president, Rick Amos, the event chairman, Mark Millerman, the sponsorships and donations, John Powers for marketing, John Eltergott for the volunteers. We had significant sponsors and contributors of Lake Forest Bank and Trust, who was presenting sponsor, Fields Volvo, Forest and Bluff, the Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital, and Lovell's Restaurant. We also had key staff I'd like to thank, Wendy McKiernan, the city event coordinator, Kathy Chapochich, promotions, signage, and marketing, Peter Gordon, the pre-post event setup and event parking. We had Jim Held, Deputy Chief of Police, and Robert Sirkowski, the Fire Marshal. Again, there were a lot more people involved in that. It took a lot of time and a lot of effort. Thank you, certainly Mary Van Arsdale and all the Parks and Rec folks and all the other city folks that helped out. Again, it was a very fun evening, very well done, and certainly we'll look forward to next year's event as well. I also want to make just a quick comment. We're going to have a committee report, or we're going to have the staff report on some of the power outages and some of the things that happened in the storm. That will be coming up. I just want to make some quick comments in that regard. I was at a Lake Forest, Lake Bluff Chamber meeting this past week, and we had the mayor of Lake Bluff, and myself will present kind of a little synopsis on what's going on in the towns. And of course, a lot of the discussion evolved around the outages and what we're all doing about it, what we can do about it. And I think just a quick, at least from my perspective, is that we can all kind of vent on ComEd, and it's probably, you know, warranted. They did have, I think, almost 900,000 people without power this last storm. It was a very nasty storm. Took down a significant amount of infrastructure. They had 800 and some crews out working. I know they had their hands full. But from my perspective, I think what we need to look at is what can, you know, local city government, what can state government, what can we do to kind of work together to kind of forge some of these disaster plans. As I stated at that event, this is probably the fourth one now we've had this year with a significant snowstorm, plus 3 major, you know, wind and storm damage in the last month. So that's 4 for the year. You know, is this climate change? I can't tell you. I mean, it's certainly unprecedented so far that we're having this type of significant storms. But I think at least going forward, it's prudent on our part as local government to start thinking about what we can do to help manage these situations. Certainly, we're at kind of a loss of manpower when we have a lot of intersections and traffic lights out. Can we share services with other communities to try to manage some of these major intersections, although they're state arterial roads? Is there things that we can do to help out? We talked internally even about, you know, trying to see if there's opportunities to go out to bid and ask, you know, so maybe some of these generator providers, if they would be able to provide discounted packages to homeowners. You know, if you wanted a whole house generator, they're not cheap. I know they're, you know, $5,000 to $10,000 probably for a unit. Maybe there's a possibility the state goes out with it. Maybe the cities get together. You know, I think we just need to start thinking outside the box a little bit. We do need to start planning more significantly for these types of storms and weather-related events. So I would certainly have asked Bob Kiley, the manager, to start thinking about that with staff. I asked who was present there that afternoon, State Senator Susan Garrett and State Rep Karen May, if they would please start, you know, thinking about that planning. Susan Garrett came back the next day with a proposed meeting for, I believe it was next Thursday, was that it, Bob? At our MS building to see if we could get local and state governments together and start at least thinking about how we can prepare for these events going forward, what we can do. And I think we have to take that approach. I don't think we can sit and wait to change ComEd. You know, ComEd may change, but it's going to take, quite frankly, an act of the state legislator to try to get them to do things differently if that's in fact what we need to have done. But certainly there's a lot of things that we can do on the local level, and I think it's prudent on our part, again, that we start doing that. So I'm starting to push for it, and hopefully we get the support of our local reps and senators to do the same. And I'm hopeful that if people have ideas, any thoughts, certainly within the city, homeowners, whoever, let's put them on the table. Let's start thinking about them, and let's see what we can do to make our own improvements in any way, shape, or form. So I look forward to doing that. And those conclude my comments as far as the mayor's comments this evening. Our next item is comments by city manager. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'll have a couple of follow-up comments, but let's first hear a presentation from Deshay Calamar, Director of Human Resources, on 50-strong organization that's operating here in Lake Forest, Lake Bluff area. Deshay?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I'm really delighted to be here to inform you of a group that I've been working with for the past 2.5, 3 years. It consists of all those organizations up there, public institutions, not-for-profit institutions in the Lake Forest and Lake Bluff area, the city, of course, Lake Bluff, all the school districts in both of those communities, Lake Forest College, Lake Forest Graduate School, LEAD, Speak Up, Chamber, churches, Historical Society, and then the Charmed Foundation, which you may not be quite as familiar with as you are with the others. They are a not-for-profit organization, and they have given us outstanding staff assistance as well as some monetary assistance. Okay, there we go. Be smarter than the remote. I never get to touch that at home. That's why I don't know how to use it. It's true. What can I say? It's a guy thing, you know. We initially got together in a spirit of collaboration, and we established our vision to strengthen and grow this collaboration and learning for the purpose of promoting a principled, ethical, and engaged community. What sort of evolved from that was really guided by the economic times and the budgets that all of these organizations were facing. We all were facing either layoffs or downsizing through attrition. And often the first thing that gets cut in those types of times are training budgets. Yet it's also a time when those things could be needed the most. So what we found the need was to broaden and focus enhanced problem solving and to address the emotional side of work changes. We all had reductions, as I mentioned. So how do we give our leaders the tools to maintain, first of all, their own energy and resiliency, as well as to help the employees who are still there and working and picking up the slack, how to help them cope not only with the loss of people not being there any longer, but also the extra work that they may be assuming, and how to keep them positive. This all resulted in a lot of networking amongst the organizations, and it also resulted in some training that we did by combining our resources. We focused on resiliency, becoming a change leader, how to rebuild with courage, how to be an inspirational leader, and how to build dynamic teams. The first thing that we offered, formal thing that we offered, was in January of 2010, a full-day leadership training. We had 43 people attend. The average cost was $158 a person, and there were several of the larger organizations in this group that sponsored that. We were trying to get some additional interest, and that did in fact happen. Then this year in January, we sponsored a half-day session, and we had 56 people attend that session. That was an average cost of $71 a person, and everyone, all of the organizations chipped in for that. In addition, we've done some what we call lunch and learns or book clubs focused around change, and those have been either completely sponsored by the Lake Forest College, where it was a free event, or we have started doing a nominal charge of $10 a person and then up to $15 a person. Again, the college, Lake Forest College, has been underwriting the difference on those. They've been hosting us. These are all taught by our own members, you know, and having good book discussions on those. This is sort of a roadmap of what we've done. As you can see, the first full-day training session was Thriving Under Pressure, how to live and work intentionally. This dealt with the resiliency and helping employees cope. We've had webinars. Then we had a half-day session this year, which was on the Inspiring Leader. Just so you know how this really relates to the city of Lake Forest, you all know that our leadership team in Public Works is entirely new because of the retirements. And all of them attended en masse for these training sessions, and also for a session at the Lake Forest Graduate School where the author of the book Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard, spoke. They all attended together. It puts them on the same page. They all kind of know what direction they're going in. We had a number of other employees attend as well, but I thought it was such a unique situation with all of them being new and going together. It was pretty valuable. The feedback I got was very good on that. Then we've done the lunch and learns, we've done webinars, and this is where, you pay for one cost of a webinar. Well, we've been inviting different people in because it doesn't matter how many attend. We've done those on morale, communications. We also have a newsletter that we put out periodically to all of the people who attend our events so they can keep up with what's going on. Now, this is our glitzy chart. This is all the number of people. We've actually had about 82 employees from the various organizations attend our events. And so we probably should change our name again, but, the logo's getting a little large. However, the city itself has had 24 employees take advantage of this program. We hope to continue. Our next event probably will be another book club in September. And then we hope to follow up again with some kind of formal seminar type thing next year, early next year. Any questions? Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Deshay. Going back to some of the mayor's earlier comments regarding the recent storms, I think we this evening wanted to provide a quick overview to the city council and the community and what transpired not just in the first storm or second storm, but all three storms in terms of city responses, most notably from Public Works and Parks and Recreation. But I think also one of the things that we learned, and I'd like to think that Commonwealth Edison learned as well, is that they are not an independent island out there operating within our communities, because clearly if they had had better communications and coordinations with the local municipalities, then things could have been much smoother and easier than they were. I participated in multiple conference calls with municipal officials from Zion down to Winchester, and most every community was saying the same thing, is that we don't get any information out of Commonwealth Edison. We don't know where you're at. If you would ask us, we could help tell you where you should go. And, a good example being the first storm and getting the lights on Route 41. I mean, it was a disaster because they were trying to hook up homes at the time that, basically traffic wasn't moving on 41 and people couldn't get around town. I did have a meeting with representatives of Commonwealth Edison between the second and third storms, and they acknowledged this problem. Unfortunately, they couldn't change quick enough to put anything in place before the third storm. But I think, as the mayor indicated, that later this month there is a meeting with municipal officials and Commonwealth Edison officials and state representatives where hopefully the dialogue will begin. I think the mayor is correct in his assessment that it's going to require some kind of legislative change because ComEd doesn't move quickly. And hopefully everybody can learn from this, including the city staff, because I'll say that while I think our staff performed admirably during these three storms, was quickly out there trying to restore to the extent that we could life back to normal, clean up the streets and clean up some of the storm damage, is that we learned some of the things as well. And I think, as the council knows, we do have a snow emergency plan, we have a stormwater emergency plan, and we are in the midst of developing a power outage emergency plan. Because as much as people probably don't want to hear it, I think we need to start planning for these happening, if not annually, certainly on a regular basis. The other thing that I think we are learning as others is that because we have such low density in the city of Lake Forest, we are not going to be at the top of their list. When you have a storm go through like that, their goal is to bring up the most people in the shortest period of time. And that's one of the reasons why some of our municipal buildings, some of our traffic signals and so forth just don't get to the top of the list, because they're trying to go to those denser populated areas to try and bring those areas up so their numbers look better when they're being announced in the 10 o'clock news. And so I think that's something that we have to address. It's something we have to prepare ourselves for. And that's something we'll be working with the council and the community as we go forward in putting this plan together as to how we're going to deal with this. Because as you'll see here in Michael and Mary's presentation, it was a tremendous outlay of both manpower and resources to provide the services that we did over the 3 storms that we had. So, Mary and Michael, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Mayor and Alderman. Thank you for letting us share with you, really from the city's perspective, how we addressed and learned from this storm. We start with the first slide here, which we call the city storm response, but I really think we should almost insert the word team in here, because you'll hear tonight, really every department in the city pulled together to address the issues and response to the community's needs, and it was really a swept impact that we had to work on throughout all departments of the city. We did have 3 significant storms that hit Lake Forest, and some people may be more aware of a storm in their area than to realize that there was actually 3 of them. The first storm was on June 21st, and it was pretty widespread, hit all the wards throughout the community, but very interesting storm in that it would go down a block and you'd see maybe a leaf on the ground, and the very next block you'd see trees just down all over. So kind of didn't have such a wide swath as some of the other storms. The June 30th storm primarily struck at the lakefront late in the evening. Around 8:30 that storm came in, and it really cut in along the shoreline, hit Forest Park very heavily, and a lot of the area along Lake Road and that side of town. And then our last storm was on July 7th, and that was the one that came in on early in the morning, a Monday morning, and did damage throughout the entire community. Our staff's first goal was to have our responders on site. I will say for every storm we had forestry crews in within 45 minutes of all storms and out on the streets, doing what they could to first identify the streets and power lines that were down, to clear the streets and create safe passages either on streets or sidewalks for the community. And the police department is the ones who trigger those calls to the forestry supervisor, who then begins to allocate and get all the staff in into the streets to do that. Right away, beginning with the very first storm, we started our crews on 12-hour shifts. So they were in from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. We couldn't go much later on the crew shifts, mainly to rest the guys, but also because of the danger situations we had with power lines or dangling limbs and things like that were an issue and a challenge for us. But we did do 12-hour shifts until each storm was addressed. We had large-scale power outages, as you'll see later in the report, on each of these storms, and we'll touch on that as well. We have pictures on each of these slides in your packets that show some of the damage to the trees, et cetera, that was around town. So first, also to touch upon the police department, this first slide really is their information they could share with us that really started with that first storm on June 21st. At that particular storm, they had 16 traffic lights that were without power throughout town, which was a combination of 856 outage hours. They looked at, after the fact and during the event, trying to determine where they could provide some manual traffic direction. And the reasons that they didn't was just the challenges that they were facing with insufficient manpower and equipment to cover all of these different traffic light outages. There was going to need multiple officers, especially on the large, busy roadways of 41, 43, and 60 for the intersections. If they had been able to staff those, it would have required 29 employees, resulting in an additional 1,602 man-hours, and the cost would have exceeded $94,000 for just the one storm. And if you can imagine, multiplying that for Storm 2 and Storm 3, how that is a challenging situation. The fire department were the first to really sound the alarm for all the residents with using the emergency siren, which, as we know, they practice with, and we don't hear that often, but it is a terrifying sound, but such an important sound to hear. And that happened on the June 21st at 8:45 p.m., which was when the first storm did come through Lake Forest. For them, between that time, 8:45 p.m. and by 6 a.m. in the morning, they had made 57 emergency response calls out to residents in need throughout the community. They did hundreds of calls since that time and follow-up issues and calls for each of the storms. So again, this just gives you a snapshot from that first storm for them. Community development was impacted as well. They were getting a lot of phone calls, obviously, right off the bat into municipal services regarding generators and backup power supplies. I know they're already beginning to address what they can do to provide some guidelines and assistance on what you could use to get you through these kind of difficult storms, and try to use the dialogue to help communicate some of that going forward. And of course, they were also fielding a lot of calls about removals of trees that were on their private property and how best to address that. So they were very instrumental in helping the residents from their private home situation. The City Hall office really became the hub for where we were trying to collect in the information and get our news releases out to online media, as well as a daily storm status update on the website, and also out throughout all the staff and the departments in the city. They were the contact for ComEd. Karina Walters, who's here tonight, was very involved in that, along with Susan Banks. Really trying just to keep that information up to date as best that we could get it in, as well as just providing continual information on what was being restored throughout the community, not only to residents, but also businesses and then city facilities, because they were also impacted. And then I'm going to turn it over to Michael. He's going to go through some of the statistics of what involved with the storm as well.
Good. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. For the statistics, again, a joint effort between Parks, Forestry, and Public Works. This is specific to the Parks Forestry operation. They generated approximately 2,300 loose yards of material that was collected. That equates to approximately 23 garbage trucks, compacted garbage trucks. In addition to that, our streets and sanitation guys picked up another 15 trucks of material at the curb that was brought to the curb, no charge. So 38 garbage trucks, 25 compacted yards in each, a lot of material. Parks and Forestry collected approximately 300 yards of wood chips. That's about 15 semis worth. Throughout all the operations for all three storms, we had multiple vehicles mobilized each day, chainsaws, obviously, 356 hangers. So hangers are obviously limbs that are hanging that need to be removed on trees that the city owns, right-of-way trees. We had our water and sewer guys, as they were driving throughout the town, note that for Parks and Forestry. 81 trees, city trees, lost in the storm. Of the 81, we've got 18 still that Forestry needs to remove, plus another 35 down at Parks Forestry down at Forest Park that need to be removed. One thing I do want to highlight that we didn't put on here, the key really for the success of this, I think, is the equipment that we have. The fact that we have got a log loader, a tower that goes 75 feet up in the air, a chipper that takes 21-inch logs, 6 packer trucks, a compost center, you put all that together, that's why this town looks as good as it does in such a short manner. So we're very proud of that, and obviously thank yourselves and past councils for giving us that equipment. Very, very important. The next slide, financials, to give a quick financial summary. Lays out obviously the straight time and the overtime, the equipment costs as well. If we look at the total city financial impact, it's approximately $180,000. In theory, out of pocket is going to be the overtime and the other costs. The overtime was approximately $43,000, and then between the costs that we had for additional refuse that we collected after the storm, in the refuse, when people emptied out the refrigerators, we had a lot more garbage. We had different panels, security panels that went down and broke, we needed to replace, battery, fuel, those types of things. In addition, the golf course, since they do not have backup power, they lost a good amount of revenue as well. A quick summary of as far as the data that we could find from ComEd. The first storm that came through on June 22nd, they had approximately 280,000 customers without power. Of the 280,000, 4,600 were in Lake Forest. The numbers obviously continued to go down as the days went on. On the 23rd, it jumped down to 95,000, 2,400 Wichita and LF. The second storm on June 30th, as Mary noted, primarily hit east of Sheridan Road, and we had a hard time getting numbers from ComEd as far as how many people were out of power on that one, but it was focused on the northeast quadrant of town. The third storm, obviously the largest one that ComEd has said they've had to address in history. 600,000 customers without power. Initially, on the first day, we weren't able to get numbers of how many in Lake Forest. On the 12th, the following day, we had a number of 1,700, and then by the 15th, it had gone down to 467. As of, I believe, Saturday evening, everything had been restored. As Bob Kiley had mentioned, our future plan is obviously to review some future power outages considerations, different things that we can look at in assisting our residents, possibly assisting ComEd on how we can address some of the concerns. But as far as getting our word out to our residents, phone applications, the Code Red system, which is the reverse 911, where we have a recording. Backup generators included in your packets, or excuse me, is something that was handed out this evening, is a list of all of our city buildings, and we gave you two sheets, one that lists which buildings actually have backup generators, which ones do not, which ones we're recommending that we're going to look for in the future. And then obviously on these three storms, which buildings were without power and for how long. So we were able to pull that data together. Storage locations for debris. We obviously have the compost center, which is a wonderful asset to have, but when the stoplights are out, especially in that first storm, having the trucks wait in line on Deer Path, Waukegan, it was very difficult. So the idea came up to use our old municipal services site, which was a great idea, and temporarily offload there. As we noted, we will be working with ComEd in the future to try and develop different plans and ways to better address things. There still obviously is some work remaining. Parks and Forestry, as we said, have got a lot of hanging limbs to remove down at Forest Park, but they still have a lot of tree removals that need to get done throughout town as well, and they are working on those. But we're happy to report, as of today, all the critical cleanup has been done. All the material that was brought to the curb between today and tomorrow, we'll pick it up as well. We'll go ahead and collect. And then we did receive notice Friday afternoon that the county at least is going to try for FEMA money. Whether it's successful or not, it's still out there. The governor has to sign off on it, and then the feds have to sign off on it as well. So with that, if you have any questions for Mary and I, would be happy to address.
I'd just like to comment. I received a robocall with the first one, which if I hadn't been outside and heard the siren, that would have been very useful in telling me to get to the basement. So I don't know how many people we reach with those things, but I think they serve a real purpose.
Okay. Very good.
I have a couple of comments. One, just since I have to go all the way to Oak Brook every day for work, and sometimes I take side routes, I've had a chance to see what some of the other communities around the Chicago area are looking like. It's really remarkable, given the amount of damage we had, what this town looks like. It looked like 3 or 4 days after the first storm, and the cleanup has been, consistently ahead of what you see if you go to other communities in the area. So you definitely deserve commendation for that, because I think we probably also have more trees than most of these places. So, so really great job on that, and I mean it's nice to feel like you're in a place where things can still get fixed when they break. Bob, you made a comment in the introduction that we should be planning for more of these. Other than the fact that we have relatively low-density population and therefore are going to be at the bottom of Commonwealth Edison's list, for the foreseeable future, is there some other is there something else operating out there, the infrastructure quality, and is there some other reason why we would be expecting, other than continuing acts of God, more trouble?
Yeah, I think like anything else, you learn from your past experiences, and it seemed like, knock on wood, we had gone a couple of years without any real major storms blowing through town or major outages. I do recall back 15-plus years ago, we would have them frequently. Then Commonwealth Edison came through town, did some trimming, and I think we dodged a lot of bullets in terms of weather and high winds like we've been experiencing here for the last 45 days. I think from our standpoint, we're just recognizing that, number one, we do have a lot of trees in town. Number two, we do have a lot of overhead wires, and unfortunately, people have asked, should we put things underground? And you can, but it's about $1 million a mile, and so it's not inexpensive. And the downside of being underground is that when there is a fault, it takes a lot longer to find it, and so you potentially could be without service. So it's a trade-off in terms of what's more advantageous. And so I think recognizing what we've gone through here in the last couple of months is just recognizing that we cannot be dependent upon Commonwealth Edison as much as we'd like to. And I don't want to bash Commonwealth Edison, but I guess I was very disappointed as an organization in how they could respond to this kind of an outage. And it got to a point where, quite candidly, and maybe it's a lesson for all of us to learn, is that they were acting without any data and information. And somebody asked me earlier about Green Bay Road and why it was closed for so long. Well, they actually had a crew that turned power off to the line, but never told anybody. And so the Green Bay Road was probably closed for, a day and a half before we said, what's going on and why is this taking so long to open this road back up? And they would have a construction crew and forestry crews that weren't communicating with each other, because a construction crew would show up and there'd be a tree on the line and they'd say, well, the forestry crew's got to get here first to take the tree down, and then they'd go and they would never know when the tree and the limb came down, and so they would come back. And despite all of our invitations to help them, they just, I guess it's the ComEd way, is they just decide that they're going to do things their own way. Now, I'd like to be optimistic and make the assumption that they're going to learn from this, and they will reach out to the communities and other municipal leaders and say, how can we do better next time? But I'm not overly optimistic for that. So I think that from our standpoint, and I think that's where, my conversations with the mayor, because actually he was in my office when that storm went blowing through on Monday morning. And we were talking about, are there ways that Lake Forest residents can prepare themselves for things like this?
I got in my car and drove through it from that same meeting. So.
Yeah. And so I think that's really, I think we owe it to our residents to acknowledge, not unlike a snowstorm, is that we have to come up with a plan. Is it going to be inconvenient at time? Absolutely. But also educating ourselves on when these things happen, then how do we best prepare? And I think the question came up earlier about how can we use not only our outdoor warning system better, but how can we use our Code Red system? As council knows, we have the ability to call everybody in town. And most people think, well, if my power's out, you can't call me. Well, you can set it up that I will call your cell phone. I mean, there are ways to do things like that we can provide more information, better information for our residents than what we were able to provide them over these past 3 storms. So,
And I think, Bob, that's a real key point that you and I had talked about. I know we talked about with staff briefly, but a lot of residents were frustrated they didn't have information. Well, we weren't getting information from ComEd. And then, okay, how do we communicate with residents? And I think it goes back to what Karina has worked with in the office of the city manager with the communicate to citizens via the website. Of course, when you're out of power, you now have their website. So now we're back to how do we get information to the residents. Now, obviously, it'd be nice if we could obtain cell phone numbers. Residents, if they wish, are they willing to give up those cell phone numbers to get a call in an emergency? Hopefully. But I think, again, is starting that dialogue and starting that database and starting the procedure. So if we need to go through these exercises, we have a plan in place so we can implement and have that automated system go out and tell people, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, here's the information available. And I think that's the planning that I was talking about, that we don't know what the next event might be, a snowstorm or a rainstorm or a windstorm, or, we don't get that many tornadoes, thank goodness, but, we don't have hurricanes, thank God, but, whatever that might be. And I think there's certainly, these power outages have been more frequent, so I think it's too, we need to start taking that initiative on our own and putting those plans together, and not wait for the state or the, federal government or any other government to do it. And I assume we have the capability, so let's get going.
Perhaps we should have an emergency preparedness day every year, just set aside and, publicize it and make people aware of everything and test our systems.
I agree.
Just a little side note, we, in my company, we've increasingly been using text messaging instead of telephone calls, because you can blast it out, and it certainly reaches the younger population quickly.
And ComEd has a system where they will text you on your cell phone.
Right. And those are the kinds of things, because I think our Code Red system with, I think a module, we have that capability, and these are the kinds of things that we'll be looking at and learning from and moving forward.
Yeah, I was going to comment, and it's just, at least from the calls I got, generally, most of the calls were very understanding that storms have their own unique nature, and it's very difficult to respond. And the calls that I received generally were very happy with the city's response, that the people from the city were there to listen. But I think the frustration, as we've kind of touched upon, has been trying to communicate with ComEd. There was a general feeling that they didn't know that the people whose power was out were out there. There was no way to get that word through to them, and the general message getting through was the lowest response time for the last storm, that the power will be on by Sunday, which is about 7 days later. Instead of giving a realistic sense of when the crews are going out, it gave a lot of people a sense of kind of short-term hopelessness, that they weren't being heard. And if there was at least a place that people could communicate, so if there's masses of homes that are out so things could be pinpointed better, it would probably improve it. The communication, as you said, I thought was maybe an area that they could improve on, and maybe something that we could feed them data to know where to go. Just a thought. You can't have a perfect system with storms, but at least if there was a central area to report outages to, or specific homes that might improve.
In fact, as Bob and I spoke, the city has had pretty good data on, collecting that information. We even volunteered to ComEd. We'll give you the data that we know, which is pretty reliable data from our own homeowners. But there was no, correct me if I'm wrong here, Bob, there's no response on the other side from ComEd as to what does that mean?
Right.
We give you information, but we're not getting feedback as to what are they doing with it, or, and I think, again, I how they operate, I can't explain. I don't think anyone can explain. I know they had hundreds of crews come in from other states. I'm sure they're trying to manage those folks, but the communication on their part, I think the frustration, as you correctly pointed out, was that, my power will be on day 1 or day 5. Well, do I throw out my food today, tomorrow? Do I go to the hotel? Do I change my business? If you had any more specificity in there within 24 hours, 48 hours, certainly you could plan, but we're not given that information, so hence the frustration on all of us. And that's where we really need to hammer home to ComEd, their ability to communicate to the municipalities is almost non-existent right now, so.
Yeah, general comment, I thought at least the residents that I talked to had extreme patience, probably a lot more patience than I'd have if I had the power out for 2 or 3 days. So everyone was very understanding of the event, and we kind of owe it to them to give a little bit more.
I know I cleaned out 2 freezers and lost a lot of food for a few days, and it's not fun, but.
As Michael indicated, we picked up an awful lot on Friday.
Yeah.
So, Michael, if you want to stand there and give us an update on the recycling carts.
Absolutely. Couple things, we're happy to report, obviously, as we mentioned at our last meeting, that we did in fact receive the grant. We have received and deposited the check from the state. Ownership is 9/10 of the game.
And it cleared?
And
It cleared?
as soon as that came in, it did. So we have copies of everything, so we're happy about that. The residents this week that began today, we were hoping that last week, postcards that we sent out in the mail, and they look like this, that have one side that talk about how they can sign up for a free cart. The other side lists, again, the materials that we accept and materials we don't. Those cards began to show up in residents' mailboxes today and will be throughout the rest of the week. Again, we have 3,200 carts that are available for this first year. We'll apply for the grant in February again, cross our fingers we get it, and we'll outfit the remaining part of the town. We have advertised in a good different number of ways. Obviously, the postcards, the boards out, the community sign boards, we put magnets on our trucks, the city's webpage, all of that. We wanted to show you real quickly how simple it is to sign up for a cart. The logo that we use, the recycling a la carte, it is consistently across all of our advertising. So it's on the city's webpage, it's on this, it's on the trucks. You simply click on that. It brings you to information that talks about, obviously, the recycling program. But right at the very top, you can go to that link right there or even above it, and it'll take you to the Survey Monkey. It's all it simply is, asks which ward you're in, first and last name, your address, phone number, whether or not you would like us to take your recycling bin when we deliver these in August, or whether you want to keep them. And you hit done, you submit it, and that's it. As of close of business today, I think we had 350 people signed up, but again, these cards were just beginning to come out in the mail. So we just want to remind residents to please sign up. If they have any questions, to call us. We'd be happy to help them out.
Are they free when you
They
sign
are.
up?
They're free. If residents would like a second card, then they're $50 each. But the initial card is free for everyone.
Do the cards and the website contain information about what can and cannot be recycled?
It does. The postcards that everybody will be receiving has one side that shows everything that is acceptable, it's not. The same information is on the website. When the carts are delivered, as we talked about, a decal is going on the inside of the lid. It's the same thing. We're being consistent across the board. So residents are going to see this throughout all of our PR campaign. We're also going to do it in the dialogue in September as well. So it's a pretty comprehensive list. Everything can be mixed together. We had a lot of questions on that. Do they need to separate? No, they do not. Everything can be mixed together.
So if you have a cart and you fill it up and still have stuff left over, can you put one of the old bins out there, or do you have to wait for the next week?
Temporarily, short term, yes. I'd say over the next 8 to 10 months, yes. But depending upon if we're able to replace one of our recycling trucks, and it's an automatic truck, depending on how that truck is set up, there is going to be a point in time where we're not going to be able to pick up the carts and also manually dump bins, depending again on what type of vehicle we have.
So that would be the point where you might want to get a second bin, if you consistently fill it up, okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Michael, when will residents know when the bins will be delivered? Will there be an email notification or?
Right now, we have simply told them that they'll be delivered in September on one of their recycling days, so one of the 4 weeks in September. We are actually going to be receiving the carts this week from North Carolina. The entire shipment is coming, and we've got to assemble the carts. We've got to put this decal on them. We've got to figure out our routes, how we're gonna do this, because as the materials, if you're a Monday collection day, as we take your material and collect it at the curb, we're going to have a crew right behind them that is going to have the list that says this address is getting a cart, they want their bin, leave the bin, or they don't, and we take it. These carts are big, so bringing 3,200 carts out is going to be a halfway decent effort. But each cart is going to have on the bottom of the label an area for us to write the address in. Each cart will have a serial number, so we will know exactly Cart number 1234 belongs to this address. It was delivered on this date by this person, so we have a database for future.
Is there a way to screen the carts when you're collecting the garbage? So if somebody reports a missing cart, you can put up the all points bulletin?
No. No, but I'll tell you, the only reason we did this, it's interesting, we have at times residents that will come in and ask for a replacement bin, and they'll tell us under their breath they think their neighbor took their bins. So these are all numbered so we know who has what.
So vigilante justice, you can
Yes.
go and check your neighbor's cart.
So how many, so each cart is what size, and how does that compare? How many old-fashioned bins would
Four.
you, it would take four old-fashioned
Four
bins to fill up
will
one cart?
one of the carts, yep.
So I don't see very many people with more than two. Some have three.
Oh, boy, yeah, we actually have a lot of stops that have got 3, possibly 4. You know, our other hope with this is that residents are really going to read this material and realize they can recycle a whole lot more
Yeah.
than what they're currently doing. We still get, as I said before, a lot of magazines, junk mail, cardboard boxes. All of that stuff can be recycled. And to make it easy, nothing has to be separated. Just throw it in and that's it.
Like, it's a clever name to the campaign. Did we pay a private consultant, or?
Alderman Palmer, yes.
I was
He's
just,
still looking for his,
I was just,
Hundreds of thousands of
for his
dollars.
compensation.
I was just talking trash.
Just a thought.
Okay, next item.
All right. Mary, if you could put up, the final thing I have under my report is I know that members of the city council have gotten questions and inquiries from residents regarding what's happening out at Deer Path Golf Course with respect to the privatization study. And in your packet on Friday was a frequently asked question brochure that is on our website as well as available out at the Deer Path Golf Course. What Mary is putting up there right now is just sort of the timeline, because I just wanted to emphasize to everybody is that right now we're still in the information gathering phase. Appointed committee with Alderman Morsch and Alderman Waldeck on it, representing the city council, is just really looking at qualifications of various firms out there, and we'll be meeting with them later this month and before we even go out for a formal RFP process. And then later in the month of August, there will be a public information meeting once we have some data and information that we can gather. But clearly, and I think the council is well aware of this in their responses to constituents when we get there, is that, you know, the issue of the financial sustainability of the Deer Path Golf Course is in question long term. I think there was an interesting article in the Crane Chicago Business that was included in your packet, and certainly this is no different than the due diligence that we follow with all of the operations in the city of Lake Forest, and how we can look at making ourselves more efficient. And I think importantly, that Deer Path Golf Course has operated without any subsidy of tax dollars, and this was actually the first year that we had to transfer money from the Park and Recreation Fund to the golf fund to cover the debt requirement that's out there. So it's just a first indication that we do have some issues that we have to address long term. And I don't know if the privatization study will lead us there, but it's something that we have to explore and consider. And there will be ample opportunities for public to attend these meetings to learn more about what we're trying to do, and more importantly, to learn what the impact will be for users out at Deer Path. So if you have any questions, you can certainly forward them to Mary or myself, or Alderman Morsch or Alderman Waldeck as we continue going through the process.
I just would make a suggestion. The word privatization, particularly for those of us who live around Chicago, suggests you're selling something.
Yes,
Yeah.
I totally agree. I was gonna
There's
make
got
the
to be a
exact same
better
point.
word like outsourcing operations or
Yes.
something. I mean, privatization, it's a simple word, but it carries a lot of baggage that's not true. We're not going to sell the golf course.
Bad word.
I think that's a good suggestion, and Alderman, if you could come up with some French term again, like à la carte, we'll use it. So,
Soccer blue.
but I think that's a good suggestion, and I think as we put more material out there, we'll try. Because you're right, some people have said, are you selling the course? And that's the last thing we want to do, because technically we can't sell the course. We would just have to return it back to the original families who donated the property. So that's not what we're trying to accomplish here. So, but thank you.
It does
for that.
connote, at a minimum, that the person who's coming in is making some sort of a private investment, if not purchasing it outright. None of that's on the table. This is just
Actually, yes, there is a contemplated private investment.
There could be.
of the operator?
Capital,
No, of capital.
yeah, like golf.
Coming
So
from
that
the
is on the
operator?
table.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
Even though that wouldn't violate the, whatever the
As long as we
covenants
still
are
hold
of the
title.
donation of the
Right.
course originally?
No.
Yeah, and so, and that's part of this information gathering phase that we're in. There's multiple options that are out there, and we don't know which one is right or best for us at this point in time. And that's really where we're just having the initial meetings with them to just learn more about what's going on out there in the golf industry.
Then we have to
Maybe
be,
insert the word partnership somehow in this, because I think that's the theme that
Yeah,
we're
you-
trying to accomplish.
you have to be careful then,
And
because
the other thing, which is in the Q&A, is the city council would maintain the control of the fee structure. They can make recommendations of that, but they can't go in there carte blanche like in the city of Chicago with the parking meters. We would have to approve any changes in the greens fees and other fees there.
Again, that's one of the
Maybe.
options. You could,
Again,
Maybe,
that
right?
is not yet determined yet. And just as a point of reference, the city of Chicago does have control over parking rates.
Oh, what have they done with it? I'm sorry, did I miss something?
No, they have control, and they put in a schedule for what the rates ought to be over the first
so-
5 years of the concession.
So they're the guys, eh?
I think perhaps one,
There's a lot of misinformation.
yeah, one problem, or like you, exactly, on Tom's point, there is a lot of misinformation. I think there
Right.
might be a perception, or by some members of the public, that the city's mind has made up, that we've decided to go this course, rather than this is just an option that we're considering. And I think the Facts Frequently Asked Questions document really does a great job of answering those concerns and addressing those concerns. So I'm glad it's on the website. I hope more people take advantage of it.
thank you. Thank you, Mary. And that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Bob. Our next item on the agenda this evening is council committee reports, the first being a finance committee report. This is a public hearing of the city's annual appropriation ordinance, and we will need to have a motion to open the public hearing, at which time we'll take any public comment only related to this item, which is the city's annual appropriation ordinance. And then, when we are done, we'll have to close that public hearing and then make our approval. So,
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing for purposes of the annual appropriation ordinance.
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries. The public hearing is now open, and I'll turn this over to Finance Committee Chairman George Pantaleone for the consideration of the annual appropriation ordinance for fiscal year 2012 and approval of the rollovers. This is a final reading. Is there any?
I have no report.
You have no report? Then we'll take at this time, I guess, if there's any public comment on this item only. Any public comment on this item? Yes, sir. If you want to come on up and state your name and. This is only for this item. Only for this item. Any other public? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing aspect of this item only. And at this point, we will look for a recommendation for the consideration of the annual appropriation ordinance for fiscal year 2012 and approval of rollovers. Do we have a motion? I'm sorry?
Move to close the
very
public
good.
hearing.
Second.
All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
That motion carries.
And I'll
Now,
then make a motion to grant final approval of the ordinance.
I'll second.
that's a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novit,
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck,
Aye.
Alderman Moore,
Aye.
Alderman Pantaleone,
Aye.
Alderman Morsch,
Aye.
Alderman Schoenhyder,
Aye.
Alderman Palmer,
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you, Bertie. That motion carries. Our second item is the approval of the purchase of the fiscal year 12 computer workstations and laptops for all city departments. We did discuss this earlier at the Finance Committee meeting, and we'll entertain a motion for the approval of that as well.
Move to waive the bid process and approve the purchase of 67 laptops or 67 desktops and 6 laptops from Dell in the amount of $50,313.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Morsch.
Aye.
Alderman Schoenhyder.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you, Bertie. Our next item this evening is the Housing Trust. Alderman Morsch.
The Housing Trust met last week. We had further discussion about the senior cottages, albeit without any financial information. We're hoping, the goal is to have a recommendation back to the council in September relative to the senior cottages. That's it.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Morsch. Our next item is the Public Works Committee. Alderman Novit.
And actually, we have 3 items that came from our earlier Public Works meeting earlier this evening. The first item has to deal with the award of contract for the Lake and South Beach Access Road reconstruction projects. Ramesh would be presenting the information on this. And again, there was earlier conversation or discussion by Public Works, and the project itself was voted recommended for approval.
Thank you, Ken. Mayor, members of the council. As we all know, this project was discussed for the last year and all. We had a technical subcommittee, and we had a lot of options presented, and then based on the technical committee and the public input, the council scaled down on what the final design plan was. City then went out to bid with that final design plan, received a couple of bids, and with and A-Lamp was the lowest qualified, lowest bidder, and the project is under our budget. We hope to combine this project with the Lake Road reconstruction so that we can start both these projects at the same time, but having Lake Road start first, early, get it done in terms of putting the binder layer, and then start on the South Beach Access Road, which is going to start right after Labor Day, and then try to put surface coat at the same time for both the projects. That way we can get all the heavy trucks in and out. So staff is recommending awarding a contract to A-Lamp with a 10% contingency. The reason why we're doing with the 10% is there's some storm sewer work to be taken as part of this project, which will account for like 5% contingency, and we hope to get that project done within our budgeted amount.
And any questions from council? Do we have a motion for approval of the grant of the contract for the Lake Road and South Beach Road reconstruction projects?
So moved.
I'll second.
That's a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Morsch.
Aye.
Alderman Schoenhyder.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Yeah, thank you. And Ramesh, don't go too far away. You have the second item on our Public Works agenda, which would be the award of a professional services contract for a Phase 1 study and analysis of 2 sub-basins with high peaking factors based on 2010 NSSD inflow and infiltration studies.
Thank you, Alderman. Again, this is a follow-up to the June 20th Public Works Committee meeting where we discussed the 10-year study done by NSSD, which is the North Shore Sanitary District, where they treat all our wastewater. And as part of the study, we have identified areas where we received some low peaking factors, which is the average flow to the peak flow, whereas some areas we received high peaking factors. The East Skokie, there's 2 main interceptors in the city of Lake Forest, one along East Skokie River and one along Middle Fork. NSSD put flow monitoring stations along those basins, along those 2 interceptors to find out what the peak, basically the peak volumes were. And we found out that East Skokie, we saw a great reduction in the 10 years. They do it every 10 years. And on the Middle Fork, we saw a slight increase. So as part of this Phase 1 proposal, we wanted to go a little bit, NSSD did what we call as a 30,000 high report, and we want to get into the nitty-gritty details. For us to do that, we got to place some flow monitors within that sub-basins to find out exactly, identify some smaller areas to find those high peaking factors. And with this proposal, we hope to get those smaller sections taken care of in terms of high flows, and then come back to the council and show them the results on where those areas within those subdivisions where we are seeing those high peaking factors. At that time, we can go with our phase 2 proposal of doing what we call is an in-depth analysis of doing some smoke testing, TVing, and also some suggestions to the private lateral services where we can try to reduce this I&I. So right now, we are looking at this just phase 1 to start this process. Again, city has been very aggressive in our practices with our public sanitary and public storm sewers in terms of lining with our home inspection program. And now I think we are trying to shift our focus towards the private residential side. And this is the first step towards that, where we can try to tackle that aspect of the what we call is the inflow and infiltration issue. And this is the first step in terms of moving that. Along with that, we are also, as we discussed at the last Public Works Committee meeting, was to come up with some kind of a code amendment in terms of trying to inspect those lateral service lines so that we can alert the homeowners if they're doing a large project that you may require you to give us a tape of your service line, and we can take a look at it, and if it is in bad condition, we can suggest that, to replace it or line it. It's much cheaper to do it with a construction project than doing it standalone. So we're gonna come back to the council with the draft code amendment down the line, but cities right now basically looking at both the public and private side to tackle this I&I problem, as we say.
And again, it looks like a majority of this study could be paid for by remaining TIF funds that.
And the remaining, right. The phase 1 proposal, as Ken alluded at the June 20th, most of the work is by the Arbor Ridge subdivision, and that falls under the TIF area. So a portion of the phase 1 proposal, a major portion of the phase 1 proposal will be paid by the TIF funds, and a minor portion will come out of the general or the capital fund.
And any questions from council? And again, we had opportunity to discuss this at Public Works earlier today. Do we have a motion for approval of the study?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those,
That's a roll call vote, too.
okay.
Alderman Novak?
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck?
Aye.
Alderman Moore?
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon?
Aye.
Alderman Morsch?
Aye.
Alderman Schoenhyder?
Aye.
Alderman Palmer?
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Okay, and thanks, Ramesh. The third item and the final item we have on the Public Works agenda would be the award of a contract for the 2011 asphalt patching projects. This was earlier discussed at Public Works, and, well, Dan Martin's here to answer any questions that council might have in addition to the discussion that was had at earlier Public Works meeting. And are there any questions to direct to Dan at this point?
I have one more process question than anything else.
Okay.
As I look at the 3 bids here, there was one bid that was disqualified, that was also something on the order of 15 to 20% below the other 2 bids that were accepted. It was apparently disqualified for technical reasons, that it didn't comply with the bid requirements, which is a perfectly good reason to disqualify somebody. But when there's that big of a gap, how do you manage that? Did you explore with that contractor whether this was an error, or would the thing that had been left out have cost the difference between him? I'm just curious, when you see that kind of a gap, either you don't trust the bid, or on the other hand, maybe you explore a bit just to make sure that you're not missing an opportunity.
No, they just failed to follow all the requirements to submit the bid, which was the bid bond that they missed. The other 2 contractors out of the, there's 3 contractors total, had placed their bid bond in with their bid
Which is
during the bid opening, during the
10%,
public
right?
bid
So
opening.
it's- it would have raised their bid by $3,600, reducing the difference?
Correct.
As we discussed earlier?
Yes.
But only, still, there still would have been a substantial
Not
difference.
really.
It's a bond.
It's a bond, it's not a cost.
Really. It's more just the procedure.
It's an insurance policy.
It's not gonna be $3,600.
Right, it's gonna be some fraction of that.
Yeah,
So
we talked about this in the Public Works Committee, and I think the conclusion of the Public Works Committee, certainly for discussion among council, was that These are all contractors that are very familiar with the city, the ones that we go through a bidding process all the time. They all know what the rules are, and you know, when somebody doesn't comply, they don't comply. We got to kind of draw a bright line on those kind of situations. I think the committee felt that today that was a bright line. We asked the same questions that you're asking, which are good ones. And we felt that for the long-term relationship that we have with these vendors, if you were the losing vendor, you would look to the other and you'd complain.
Yes.
Given the long term that we have with these vendors, we felt that it was better to go by the rules and make sure that we enforce that. So that was the decision, but it's certainly up for council would have.
Well, you open yourself up to,
Yeah.
you know, recourse
Well, then
issues
it-
and things.
You know, and
if
then
you
in the
treat
future it
somebody
is, well,
differently.
maybe it was just this one
Right.
thing, and maybe it was something else, and then maybe there's something else. And you know, that certainly the council has the ability to override this if you'd like, but the recommendation of Public Works Committee was to award to
It's just
the lowest
frustrating.
qualified bidder.
It's frustrating when you see that huge a gap, you know, to have it kicked out on a technicality or what maybe.
I had a situation once in my life where I awarded the low contract I never wanted to, where somebody was $60 million below, 50% below the next bidder, but they had their bond in, so I did award it. It was very.
Did they
It
perform?
ended up being very painful.
Did
for
they
everybody.
perform or not? That's the other
Oh,
question.
they didn't perform at all.
Right, that's the other question.
But backtracking, we did review this at Public Works, and this vendor has done work with the city before. They've done fine work, and we encourage them to come back. We want to keep a good relationship going, and they have expressed to the city that they regret that they didn't follow the rules of the bid. To open bidding at this point, again, would be a dilemma because we want to get the patchwork program going
And it's public now.
Right.
in time to,
Yeah,
well,
and the information's all out there, right?
Yep,
to deal with the weather.
Exactly.
Probably raised their bid.
probably.
Okay, that being said, if there's any further discussion from council,
Ken, I just have one other question. Dan, can you provide us a list of these locations where the patchwork will be done?
Sure.
That'd be helpful.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah,
actually
there's 28 of
reviewed
them.
that list in the earlier
I have,
meeting.
I can give you my copy.
I'm sure we have it somewhere. We can
Great,
give it to
thanks.
you.
and
I'll make a motion to approve.
do we have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novak,
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck,
Aye.
Alderman Moore,
Aye.
Alderman Panadleon,
Aye.
Alderman Morsch,
Aye.
Alderman Schoenhyder,
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you, Bertie. And Alderman Novit, you're up again for the Senior Resources Commission.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. Our last meeting for Senior Resource was July 11th, just on the eve of the last storm coming through. And despite the power kind of wavering at the Dickinson Hall, Marla and Paul Lemieux did conduct the meeting. And the biggest issue that seems to have come through is that the piano for Senior Resource wasn't owned by Senior Resource. It's being sold, and Senior Resource is now in need of a new piano to replace the old one. It's kind of funny when you wake up what you kind of discover you have and don't have. But they are locating a replacement piano at this point, which they do want to find. They believe they have found a new piano, and again, that might be suitable, and hopefully we'll have some proposals as far as the acquisition of new piano. Senior bus is up and running, which is great, and the one thing I do want to open for discussion just for Senior Resources, we want more members. And for persons who actually want to actively participate in Senior Resource or just show their support for the program, you don't have to be 55 or 60 to join. You could be younger to join, take advantage of what's out there, just show some support for Senior Resource. So again, membership's open for all. Support to the community for it is encouraged.
I'm
Thanks.
sorry, I'm in denial.
Well, I'll get you that application at the end of the meeting. But that's all I have to report.
I thought he was looking at me when he was speaking, so I don't know, he was scaring me. I don't-
Well, just be open to the idea.
Thank you, Alderman Novit. Our next item is the Transportation Safety Enhancement Committee, and I will say there is nothing new to report in that regard at this point in time. The next being the Public Property and Lands Committee, and we will receive a report from the Cultural Corridor Task Force, reviewed by City Council later this evening in executive session. That also concludes those items. Our next one is any other additional comments by council members?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Did that make
I'm
it?
not a council
Council
member.
member.
Oh, okay. We'll make an exception.
We missed one, unfortunately. I'd like to ask Michael Thomas to come up, because everyone knows it's been a little warm recently, and before the signs go up tomorrow, I wanted Michael to brief the council about the even odd watering restrictions that are going to go into effect and why we're doing that. So
Okay.
it's both good news and bad news. We are selling a lot of water, which is a good thing. But the bad news is that it's really putting stress on the system. So Ramesh?
Just for the record, yeah, I'm not Michael Thomas. I won't pretend to be.
All right.
As Bob alluded, we noticed this morning, and we were looking at our water plant pumpage, and, we were pumping at almost 15.5 MGD, which is the first time ever in our water plant's history that we are pumping that high, which is close to our maximum capacity is at 16 million. And we are encouraging residents to follow those signs we're going to put in to start, to see if we can water between the hours of 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. so that we can increase our, what we call is during that less peak hours, we can put our water in our water tower and the booster station, so that in the nighttime, when there's a demand, we can see, we can then supply the water to them, to that. This chart will just show us on what we pumped on a daily basis in the last month, and as you can see, right now, shows the data as the, obviously we didn't have any rain event. Last time we got a report was like June 16th was the last time we had a rain event, a significant rain event which will impact. And over the last 1 month, pretty much we had some high temperatures and the demand kept going up. And most of our demands are due to the sprinklers which turn on in the nighttime. And so with these water restrictions, we are encouraging residents that if they can reduce watering during the daytime hours, that will help us to meet up the demand which is later in the night. And again, it is running at full capacity. We are providing the water. There's not a situation there in terms of not providing water. It's just that if we can control something during the daytime, that will help us keep up the demand in the nighttime. And so those signs are going to go up at key intersections, and it'll stay on for a few days until we get a good rain. The good news here is the lake temperature is higher, so which always helps with our water plant pumping, so that lake temperature is around 56 to 60 degrees. So the higher the temperature, it's easier for the water to filter through the plant compared to a cold water, the way the membrane filter water plant works. So those are all the positives, and again, we encourage the residents to reduce watering as much as they can in the morning hours, so that we can be able to supply them during the nighttime.
What are the hours?
10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
To what time?
10 a.m. in the morning to 6 p.m.
Okay, because your chart here says to 8 p.m., so on
10.
the one you gave us at the bottom, it says to 8. Is
10
it 6
to 8 p.m., sorry. 10 a.m. to 8 p.m.
To 8, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know a lot about watering lawns, but isn't that when they tell you not to water lawns in the middle of the day?
Right, but in Lake Forest, what we have noticed is like when our water plant operators in the nighttime, they look at their screens, our demand starts usually at 9 p.m. That's when the majority of the sprinkler system starts going, run the automatic cycles.
I mean, doesn't it burn up the grass to water during the day or something? Or, I mean,
That's why
my wife knows about this, I don't.
Exactly, so we are trying to say if you don't water it during the daytime, reduce it. We are not saying don't water it completely, but if you can control your irrigation system and then water in the nighttime, because that's exactly where our demands are.
I've heard that.
I'm getting
but
it
yet-
backwards or something.
I've
Are we
don't
supposed to water between 10 and 6 or not supposed to be?
Not supposed to.
Okay, sorry.
There used to be no watering from 10 a.m. Yeah, Lake Forest, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of unique in Lake Forest. Most other towns, it's just the opposite. The peak starts in the morning rush hour, 6 to 9, and then sometime in the evening rush hour from like 4 to 9.
I just heard it.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, in the Lake Forest, it's just the opposite. So, yeah, there's a reduced watering between the hours of 10 a.m. and 8 p.m.
And I might just remind the council that one of the reasons that we are somewhat concerned about this is that here shortly, we're going to begin painting our water tower, which will put further sort of stress on our ability to meet the demands. We can do it, but it's going to make it a little more difficult because we're going to be dependent upon Lake Bluff and Highland Park to help us out during this period of time. So any cooperation and assistance from the residents would be greatly appreciated.
So the signs are not going to be odd even, they're going to be just watering after 8 PM?
Right.
So you can still water any day you want, just don't do it until after 8 PM. Do I
Right,
understand correctly?
That's correct.
Okay. And then if we went, on top of that, if we went to the odd even, would that further reduce the
It would help. I think we'll take it in baby steps, if you will. We'll try this first because we do have the plant capacity to be able to do it. And as the council knows, the last couple of years, we haven't sold a lot of water. So we're happy to sell water this year and to help our bottom line. But I think if we continue for an extended period of time of not getting any meaningful rain, then we may have to take the next step, which would be the even on.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda this evening is opportunity for public to address the city council on non-agenda items. Any individuals from the public? Yes, sir.
Right at 10. Bob Pasquazi, 172 Washington Road. I want to talk about the water at the lake also. And a very simple situation that I have is not a big problem. But if any of you drive to Highwood and you look down the strip that used to go where they landed and took off at Fort Sheridan, you could see the lake. Well, at this particular time, you can't see the lake because of the weeds that were growing up on Sheridan Road. My question is, who's responsible for the cutting of that grass?
I would assume that's...
I've asked many people, and I can't get it.
That's the Lake County Forest Preserve District property, so we'll take a look at it, Bob, and notify the appropriate staff up at the county.
Well, my question is, didn't we take the responsibility for Sheridan Road when we took over the road?
We do, but that includes only about 5 feet either side of the edge of pavement.
That's all this is 5 feet. It'll cut the weeds down and everybody can see the lake. Now, it's
Okay.
not a serious problem like you have with the other part of the water. This one we're just looking at.
All right, well, we'll take a look
You're
at
the
it.
second person that's raised that issue, Bob, so maybe we should.
Pardon me?
look at it. You're the second person that's raised that. Susan Gray, of course, also raised it.
There's been many, I was the one that was responsible to get that berm down. And I worked with Randy Seebach at the Forest Preserve. We got that all cleared out, and it was nice. If you recall, up until spring and summer now, you could look over there and see the lake. And one thing that's important is that that's the only place you can see the lake from Kenilworth to Waukegan. And that's the only place. Now, we've got a beautiful lake down there. We're talking about preserving that vista and everything, but it's not being done. And that just doesn't affect us. It affects anybody that travels that road.
All right, we'll look into it with the Forest Preserve, and if it's not, then the city will have to go out there and take care of it.
Yeah.
Very simple problem.
Okay.
And I agree.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, it
Thank you.
is. It's,
Excellent.
Okay.
You must have talked to Susan.
Yes, sir. Yes. You want to state your name for the...
Jamie Pruitt, 135 South Poplar in Lake Forest. Mr. Mayor, I'm here representing concerned neighbors that surround a project that's been proposed at 27 West on Valencia. I think you're probably aware of that. And, you know, our voices have been raised, but I'm not sure we've been heard. We're very disappointed that the BRB actually approved or gave preliminary approval to the design. And understand we're moving through the process, but we would just want to get on record and represent that we have some grave concerns about this project. The zoning approval in 1981 that declared this a buildable lot was a mistake. It's in a floodway, it's in a floodplain. Last time I checked, you can't build in an area like that, but be that as it may, We've repeatedly heard throughout the process that by today's standards, this would not be declared buildable. So we have questions around whether or not today's standards might actually apply to this situation. Doesn't seem that that's been really explored thoroughly yet. We don't believe that the BRB should have approved a plan that is designed to permit flooding at the lower level of this building. Water infiltration via a venting system is clever, but creates a myriad of problems, from mold and mosquitoes to other issues that might infiltrate this building. And we don't even know if there's a precedent for this type of design in Lake Forest, and we don't want to be the test case for that. What if the petitioner doesn't move in? Who's going to buy this house in the future? There are a host of risks that come with building in a scenario like this that we feel are very, very adverse to the community and to the city in general. By approving the plan, we don't feel that the BRB is really protecting our interests as property owners. We actually had to retain an independent engineering firm, Bleck Engineering, to actually look at the data and assess the risks and try to understand the proposal. They came back with 17 individual points that had to be addressed by the petitioner. To date, I don't think that we've seen the data that supports those or refutes those points. The petitioner's plan also significantly changed from the original, which by the letter of the law and some of the data that we've been reading requires a reapplication for approval that we haven't seen. So to date, we don't know that the Clomar F granted by FEMA is relevant, and some very technical things. And we just feel the city is supposed to protect our property interests and values in this situation, and we don't think that this project taking another step forward, that's being done. So we really want the city to demonstrate some leadership in this situation. The surrounding properties, the surrounding neighbors, people are very, very concerned. There are floodway issues, there are flooding issues, and we think the risks to the city are extremely significant in this case. And the real impact is that we're not really going to know what the impacts are until there's a disaster. What if the venting system doesn't work? What if it's clogged by debris? Where does the excess runoff go? There's serious risk in that. So appreciate the opportunity to speak, and we hope you really consider that project carefully and make sure that we've really done every bit of due diligence possible to understand the risks and ramifications of what they're proposing.
I thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
I know of the petition. I do not know the specifics that you speak of in regards to all of the engineering. I don't have that knowledge. The only thing I would say is, Vic, from a legal standpoint, I mean, this is all stuff that has to go before the BRB and then come back to us as well, and I know the process is the process, so I don't know if you have any additional comment just on the overview of the process itself.
Well, as the council is aware, we do have a process to bring it before the city council. That's not the automatic part of the process, so there's actually a step in between the BRB's approval and any further review by the council, and if those steps are taken, then it will come forward.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, there's been plenty of correspondence given to the city from us as residents, a signed petition with 12 families surrounding this area. Kathy Zerniak's been very cooperative with us in gathering all that and submitting it to the BRB, so she has a volume of information on this.
Okay. We will keep informed, and we'll follow this as it goes through the procedures.
I might ask, Kathy, can you just come up in a brief, because I believe there's probably other people in the audience that are just interested. What is the status of the petition, and maybe to put a little sharper point on what Vic was saying?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The status of this petition is that after seeing it, I believe, 4 times, the Building Review Board did grant approval of the design of the structure. It does not require any variances, so it did not need to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Building Review Board expressed concern about the drainage issues and a number of times continued the petition, recognizing that the drainage issues aren't under their purview, but asked for staff to do further due diligence. FEMA has been involved in this project. SMC, Stormwater Management Commission, has been involved. The city engineer reached out twice to ask for further SMC review, and SMC did send it back and say that it was under the purview of the city. An application for a building permit has not yet been submitted. When that is submitted, that would need to, of course, be accompanied by final engineering plans, and those will all be reviewed to assure that every aspect of this project is consistent with all applicable rules and regulations. As the city attorney mentioned, there is an appeal opportunity of the Building Review Board decision. If that occurs, this matter will come formally before the city council.
So it only comes here if there's an appeal?
Correct.
Correct.
And who would appeal?
Is there any, it sounds like in this situation, is there any benefit of us having an outside consultant take a look at this?
Well, I think we're looking at several different elements of the proposal, and I don't have...
But I mean on the technical matters,
Yeah,
not on the legal matters, I understand.
No,
that's
I'm talking in terms of, the Building Review Board is looking at design. Whether there's anything in terms, and it's exterior design, it's
Yeah,
not...
no, that's all they
It's
look
not
at.
the
That's why I was
construction
asking
aspect
the
of it.
question.
So that's the BRB aspect of it. We have our building department look at the technicalities of the construction itself. We do farm out certain issues for that when they may be beyond our expertise, but for the most part, that's done in-house. And then the third level is the engineering, and I think that's the part that perhaps causes the most concern given this
Right.
property. I know that we do have the access to outside consultants to the extent that it's beyond the capacity of what the staff can fully review at any given time. But we are a certified community, our staff does do the lion's share of that work, and I think that it's really for their judgment as to whether or not we need to go beyond the four walls
No,
of the
I
city
trust their
staff.
judgment, I just, since there seems to be a lot of debate about it sometimes.
Well, and certainly, I think if the staff hasn't, the staff will receive a copy of Bleck Engineering, who was hired by the homeowners or the surrounding neighbors to look at this thing, and we will assess what issues he may have identified. And again, as Kathy indicated, we sat down twice with Stormwater Management Commission of Lake County, and we will review those with them as well and just make sure everybody has had a chance to vet whatever concerns they might have from an engineering standpoint.
Right. Just seems like there's a lot of red flags here on this project, and, when there's red flags, it's in our own benefit to take a real long, hard look at it before we move it along
Sure.
the process.
And we have been working on this project probably for about 24 months, so certainly at this point in the project, before even an application for a building permit has been submitted, there's been a great deal more study and more research, including evaluation of all the points raised by the independent engineer, Bleck Engineering. So from the staff perspective, the intention is to continue that due diligence.
Just, and it's just dating back to when I was on zoning, this lot actually came in question. And I remember the footprint to this was very narrow or difficult to get a home into. Is there any type of zoning variance that's being granted, which eventually would have to come in front of council?
There is, the project is completely in compliance with zoning and building scale. It is a lot in depth, so the setbacks are unusual, and certainly the floodplain and floodway on the property further limit the buildable area, but the house is within all of our criteria, all of our requirements.
How does the appeal process work? Who files the appeal?
Anyone can file an appeal of a building review board decision, and we've provided that information to the attorney who was representing some of the neighbors.
Which board or commission would typically be responsible for making policy decisions or judgments about these kinds of technical matters? It's clearly not building review, which is the only place that it's been reviewed.
Right, about whether the lot is buildable.
Or whether it's properly, or whether the engineering, while maybe technically in compliance, is still not desirable?
I'll take that one. We do not have, for matters of technical compliance, if they meet all of the standards, we don't have a secondary look back as to whether we want to apply our standards and policies. If somebody has the ability to meet all of our requirements, they're entitled to build. I think that the question as to the buildability is one, and Kathy may have to help me with the history on this, but it's one that I think was actually brought before the Zoning Board of Appeals some time back to confirm whether or not this was a buildable property. And so many years ago, there was that determination. But as far as is it a technically correct construction of a building, that's not something that we have any board review. Is it meeting all of our engineering standards? That's not something that we have a board to review. That's something that the city council established when it adopted the ordinances affecting those items.
I just recall from my plan commission experience that there were often engineering issues that were debated, let's say, at that level, different solutions to problems.
And that still occurs.
What's
but
desirable versus what's technically permitted. I mean, all those things were frequently discussed at the
right,
plan
but
commission.
that's usually when it first has something that would bring it before the Plan Commission or the Zoning Board of Appeals. This is not one of those issues. The fact that the Building Review Board did inquire into those issues during its review, even though technically it's looking more at the facade issues, I think is reminiscent of what you've experienced, although the level of detail that the Plan Commission would have reviewed it is quite different.
Mhm. And construction codes doesn't figure into this?
They look at the codes themselves, not the applicability of the codes to any particular situation. Unless, I should say, unless there is an appeal of a building permit, which to my knowledge has never even occurred in the city.
We promulgate the building codes.
Yes.
And we can change the building codes.
We can.
And if we change them, is it ex post facto? I mean,
It will likely not be ex post facto.
No.
Not for a project if it's this far along at this point.
okay.
Any other, yes?
I'm one of those neighbors.
Well, if you wish to speak, please come on up.
My name is Connie Saville, and I'm at 30 Honeysuckle, in that on Wensia Gardens area. And I'm here to represent my mother and my sister and myself, that we are very concerned. We've lived in that area. I grew up in Lake Forest, so I've been here 50 years, raised my daughter here, but we've been in that area 11 years. And we're right next to a retention pond or retention area. And before we were on Illinois Road, and we never had any issues with sump pumps or water. And when we've been there, this retention area, when it rains heavily, I don't know where the water's coming from, but it goes up 3 feet, something like that. And it's a huge area. So I understood that there are several retention areas just for this purpose. Then when we heard that across this, basically it's a creek, even though they call it the Skokie River, I think, but it's very small, and if this house, which is on a wetland, removes what would be the ground and some of the trees which absorb some of the water, then our fear is, where will all that extra water go? Because we're right across, and we're low. So I'm hoping that there will be a lot of looking into, what the house looks like, of course, doesn't concern us, but it's all this water. And doing a little bit of research and listening to their little vents and floodgates, and they hold the water in, then they let the water out. I mean, all of that, I assume, is based on electricity, which we all know doesn't always work during a storm, however short or long. So all of that makes us nervous, thinking, then if that happens, then what? We just had a sump pump go out, first time in our lives, and that was disastrous, and a huge fortune. So thinking of a flood does not sound appealing. So that was why I came, is to say, I hope you all will consider it, so we don't end up with another disaster.
Understood. Thank you for your
Thank you.
comments. Any other individuals from the public for public comment? Yes, sir.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tom LeClaire, and I live at 51 West Dunwencia, which is located directly in front of this lot, 27 West, which is a lot in depth, rear lot in depth, and whatever. The problem, well, we've been looking at the problem as it's looming forward since August of '09, when they started the construction on this thing, or destruction, because there were woods that had to be knocked down and before they could get back there. But there are apparently these smart vents that don't require electricity, they just require, well, they have to work. And there's no proof that they're not in place anywhere in Lake Forest, from what we understand. And when asked for testimonials or references of the petitioner's design team, of the architect, the engineer, the consultant, they didn't provide anybody that they've worked with, a satisfied homeowner, or more importantly in our case, adjacent homeowners who may have been impacted by the failure of these smart vents, which are pretty much the only thing that's allowing for this compensatory storage, which is being, well, it has to be created on the lot, so they're going to have it in a crawl space underneath the house. So I can only imagine what that's going to smell like living above it when we smell it for a good 8 months out of the year, because that's pretty much how long the lot is. If it's not flooded, it's certainly moist, and there's a lot of mosquitoes and that sort of thing. So the question is, just because it can be built, should it be built? If it's got if it meets the technical requirements. And to that end, if the city's going to require a deed be signed off by the property owner that will indemnify the city, will the adjacent homeowners be added as a protective class to this deed, that should there be flood damages as a result of perhaps this building that's going to be allowed, that there's some protection for those of us who are going to be impacted by this? Just something to think about. Thank you for your time.
Good point.
Oh, we also have a website called onwenciamemorandum.wordpress.com, where we've got lots of pictures of water, lots of water, and the flooding, and also the footprint of the proposed structure, and just how close it is on this lot. Just because it's 1.8 acres, the only buildable area is going to be regraded into like a pitcher's mound in the very northeast portion of the lot, which is only 20 feet away from the pond in the backyard and 70 feet from the kitchen window, which is, well, I invite you to the website to see just how close that is.
Can I make a suggestion? If you go to the city's website, all of us aldermen have our email addresses. Why don't you email it to all of us, and we can decide if we want to look at it or not. But that's a very, very long name you've got for your website.
Yeah, if you just
I'll probably get it wrong. So my suggestion, certainly in my case, I'd invite you to email it to me.
Thank you. I'd be happy to send you the link.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comments this evening? No, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have 4 items in the consent agenda. I will read the 4 items and then ask the council to either choose one or all for approval as they so wish. First item being approval of authorized invoices and payrolls. Second being a consideration of an ordinance amending section 40-2-1200 of chapter 40, traffic of the City Code of Lake Forest, 1971, revising Schedule 2 of stop signs by installing a stop sign on westbound Summit Place at the intersection with Summit Avenue. The third item is Market Square 2000 Endowment Fund, which is looking for an appropriation amount. And the fourth being the approval of the minutes from the June 20th, 2011 regular city council meeting. Any questions, comments about one or any of those?
I'd make a motion to approve all four.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Morsch.
Aye.
Alderman Schoenhyder.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
7
you,
yeas,
Bertie.
no nays, motion carries.
Thank you, Bertie. Our next on the agenda is ordinances, though I don't believe we have anything. No. Next is new business. Any other items this evening? If not, additional items for discussion? No? Then I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
How about
I think we moved
motion
it.
for adjournment into an executive session?
Acquisition and
All right,
I
very
move
good.
we move into executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's a roll call vote. Roll call vote, please.
Okay, Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Morsch.
Aye.
Alderman Schoenhyder. Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. We will adjourn to executive session.